I got the word that our presenter, who is somebody very special, is in the chat, is in the Zoom room. And I'm excited about that because I have not been to one of her presentations yet, but I've always been interested. So I'm going to turn the meeting over to Marni, who's going to introduce our special guest today.
This is a special guest for me. There's nothing more like amazing, I think, for a writing teacher and also just friend than to be there sort of in the beginning moments of, you know, can I do this? And then to see the stick-to-itiveness and the chutzpah or moxie or all that wrapped in one, and the heart that Tania really put into her book. Tania, can you hold it up? Because I don't have one yet. And it's a beautiful book. Is that, and to give you guys like, you know, inspiration that you can do it, you know. And that's also Tania's artwork as well. And she just really just hunkered down and did it. And so thank you for being such a inspiration to us. And I will do the official intro too, which is Tania Pryputniewicz. And I can say it now after 4 years. Tania Pryputniewicz is a graduate of the Iowa Writers Workshop, author of November Butterfly by Saddle Road Press, and Heart's Compass Tarot book, Discover Tarot Journaling and Create Your Own Cards. It's coming up on Valentine's Day from Two Fine Crows book. So hopefully Tania will let us know how to get the book. Her poems have appeared in We Will Call Your Name, Poems of Resistance and Resilience. And let's see, her nonfiction, Mom's Night Out and The Trickster, is forthcoming in Shaking the Tree, what we're working on right now. Tania is a wonderful, wonderful teacher at San Diego Writers, Inc. and through Antioch University's continuing education program. She lives in Coronado with her husband, 3 children, and 1 blue-eyed husky and formerly feral cat named Luna. And also Tania has a program or a 30-day experience coming up that I hope she will share with us. But I can't say enough about Tania, and turn it over to you. I'm so blessed and proud of you. It feels like a chills moment, kind of like, holy shit.
Thank you so much, Marni. I just want to start by thanking you, Marni, my exceptional memoir teacher and writing teacher and friend in so many ways. The book wouldn't be here without you. And also to Laura for inviting me here. It's just very special to share this moment with all of you. We have such a vibrant writing community here, and I moved here in 2012 from the Russian River area, and all I've ever seen from this writing community is just such love and support to help everybody bring their best work to the table. So I'm really hoping in this presentation today that I sort of send you on a journey or two of your own, and I really can't wait to see what you end up creating if you end up playing with some of these exercises. So I'm just going to start here, share my screen, and we'll go from there. I am soft-spoken, so please let me know if you can hear me enough yet, or if at any point it starts to fade, let me know and I'll speak up. So what I've done today is put together a sort of really gentle introduction to how to use the tarot to inspire your own writing. And I've kind of focused it around accessing your life events in support of creating something I'm calling a tarot timeline, which is really just connecting your life experiences to specific cards and images or stories that the cards might be inspiring in you. So I'll just start with a little bit of a history of the tarot. And I have a book cover here. This is a wonderful book called The Tarot, History, Mystery, and Lore by Cynthia Giles, or Giles. That's an image of the Fool card on the cover, sort of the beginner of the major arcana cards. So I'll briefly talk about the structure and then I'll dig in and show you some actual examples. But they are very much like playing cards that you would play rummy or fish with, but with some pretty significant differences. There are 40 daily life cards that show you scenarios that you might run into, and those are called minor arcana. And all arcana means is little secrets, right? And then there are people cards that we call the court cards, your kings and queens and knights. And those are parts of you or people you might run into in your life. And then the soul cards are the big secrets, the major arcana. And those go through these sort of archetypal steps a person might take on their hero's journey, from the Fool card, innocent beginner, to the world where you have a sense of what you're bringing to your community and giving back to them. There's many stops along the way. Just for fun, I've pulled up I kind of melded together two different tarot timeline history of tarot. Cynthia Giles from the last book I showed you is the gray timeline there. And then I picked up some notes from Arrien's book, The Tarot Handbook, Practical Applications of Ancient Visual Symbols. And she's really fun because she's an anthropologist and she does a sort of overview when she looks at the tarot. So, just for fun, like they think, was it 12th century, maybe the first time the cards were mentioned in Germany? There's a monk in Switzerland in 1377 who mentions them. 1392, Charles VI pays for 3 packs of cards to be made. It's kind of funny, down in Paris, they were banned for commoners in 1397. And then I've bolded this one here, Town Books of Nuremberg mention women as card painters in 1423. And then what I've done down below is I'm going to be sharing some different images from decks with you, starting with one that is probably traditionally familiar. I think you'll recognize it, the Rider Waite Smith deck. And I add Smith to honor Pamela Colman Smith, whose work has often been sort of left out. She's the actual illustrator. And then I'll be showing you images from these other decks from 1947 all the way down to the Cat Tarot in 2019. So Pamela Colman Smith is the illustrator of the deck. I'll be showing you the structure. And she was born in 1878, Jamaican mother and a white American father. And it's interesting that even Alfred Stieglitz did show some of her work in his gallery at one point. And then in 1909, she was commissioned by Arthur Edward Waite to draw a tarot deck for him. And she even mentions to him, I just finished a very big job, but for very little money. That probably doesn't surprise us, right? So many of us now do call that deck the Rider Waite Smith deck, just to make sure that we give Smith her credit. So really to back up, that there are 78 cards in the deck. And there are some very simple ways you could engage with focusing your arrow of intention around trying to remember memories or write about a specific aspect of your life. And the deck itself is organized around 4 elements that you'll recognize. The water, which is signified by the cups, or the earth, which is signified by discs, money or the body or things we manifest. And then the wands is a little trickier, right? It says fire, but you're looking at a branch of a tree blossoming. But it's helpful to think about how the sun will take a seed and burst it into blossoming. So it's the fire of solar fire in a way, in our inspiration. And then the other suit is of air, the invisible things we can't see, but our mind. And just because it's invisible doesn't mean it's any less powerful. Often our thoughts lead to intention, which lead to action. So there are 40 of these cards. And what I've done here is to show you just the aces of cups, the ace to 10, to show you how there's a progression of story that is told throughout each of those 4 elements. So we see in the bottom row, there's the ace itself. We're all born with these 4 elements: ability to breathe and love and hopefully create projects at some point or earn money and to use our creativity. But when you think about it, the story of our life ends up becoming how we do or do not have access to those elements or developing those gifts that we are born with. And as writers, that's that's where the juice is in the story, is where our challenges were in developing any one particular part of our life. So again, if you could spend time just with the aces themselves to mine each area of your life, or you could use any of these story cards to dig into memories that you have. In the upper row, you see a man with his arms folded. He's not sure if he wants to take a particular cup of love. And in the cloaked figure, we see an image of grief where there's sorrow and the cups are spilled. But when he turns around and is finished grieving, you'll notice there is a couple cups behind him. In the next image, we see a sort of innocent expression of love between children or two young people, maybe siblings, maybe neighborhood children. So again, the stories that move from a beginning impulse, and they'll show us a culmination. The very closing image is this 10 of cups, sort of happy family image where there's been an expression of love and a bringing forward of some kind of a heart wish or dream. So then there are cards called the people cards. And we're looking at the Rider Waite Smith deck. That deck came out around the turn of the century, right? 1909, I think is what we said. And so using kings, queens, knights, and pages can feel sort of archaic to us in some ways. But there are hundreds of deck makers making decks right now. And the idea that deck makers take forward is the idea of moving from learning something or being green to a state of maturity or learning, so that we are eventually sitting in the throne of some kind of power in that particular element. So I'm just noticing the image is reversed. So you're seeing the King of Cups, the Queen is facing him, the Knight of Cups is riding forward with his cup of the heart. And this little page, she's still learning how to express herself, but we see some kind of new idea emerging in her particular cup there. So there are 16 of these because you'll see the king, queen, knight, and page of each element. So what I've shared here again is the cups. So the ones who are looking at the heart. So just for fun, I wanted to show you how rich and fertile the territory of the decks across different makers really is, so that if you decide that you want to use the tarot as a tool to inspire your writing, you'll want to spend time looking at the different decks. The whole story of the cards shows us a way that we might grow across our lifetime, or what kind of encounters we might have, how our soul might develop. But maybe you want to learn about plants, so you might get the herbal deck. Maybe you want to learn about Celtic history, so you get the Celtic deck. Maybe you want to learn more about your particular culture or lineage. There's Afrocentric decks. There are the roots of Asia. So in this particular image, we are looking at 4 versions of the same card, but they're all made by different deck makers. So they all are expressing this idea of the youthful learner about the heart. And so the very first image is a little fuzzy duck in a rainbow of water, and that's the tarot of the wild unknown. In the second deck, we're seeing the Thoth image, which is this sort of haunting image of a woman who's letting go of this turtle who's emerging out of the shell, and there's a lotus blossom there, and she's sort of detaching, a concept of detaching with love in some way. And the Daughters of the Moon deck is round, Maiden of Cups, Pisces. We see this beautiful mermaid looking in the mirror. And again, the deck makers will play with what they call the cards. In the Daughters of the Moon, they have maiden, mother, and crone significations. They've also tied the astrology to the water. So any of the water signs can be attributed to the people cards. So it's just very rich with association. So now we're looking at that last part, 22 of the major secrets or the soul's journey cards. And again, here we're looking at the Rider Waite Smith deck. So the Fool is where we come into our life and incarnation. We're willing to play. There's a sense of playfulness and a lack of fear. There are cards that progress between the Fool, but I've just picked out a few to show you. Eventually, we do learn how to love others and to love ourselves. Then the Tower card is showing us an experience where structures are changing and something we thought was sure or in place is coming down. And we are given an insight that we can't unsee, and we are somehow changed by that. And the World card shows, again, I've mentioned, where we come to an understanding that we play an integral role in our community and how we might give back and feel beautiful in that role. You'll also notice that that World card is inside of this circle, and that's kind of a nod to the way then we go right back into the Fool again and begin our journey all over. And of course, these cards are arranged numerically, but as we know with life, we often experience things in a much more jumbled fashion. It's not like we go through these things in any particular order, but the deck gives us a chance to kind of look at a progression or how that might move. So again, I wanted to show you the variety. So these are the very same cards we just looked at. The Fool card in this image, instead of a young person not aware that they could step off the cliff, you've got the little very similar image, the little fuzzy, vulnerable baby chick here poised on a leaf with kind of one foot stepping off of the limb. The Lover's card here next is from the Thoth deck. And here we have the Hermit is actually blessing the lovers in this particular image instead of that guardian angel that was in the last one. The third deck, again, is the Daughters of the Moon that was put together by 13 different women artists. We see this image of Kali and the ground itself moving apart. The last image is the Motherpeace deck. And there we see this beautiful circle being made up of people of all different colors and shapes, celebrating how we all come in with our role to play, regardless of where we're born on the planet, what we come into. So here is a side-by-side sort of comparison of how different the decks are from one another. So you can see that if you were to sit down and start writing to any of these cards, you're going to come up with very different writing depending on the deck that you choose. So you would want to spend some time figuring out which imagery resonates with you. And for fun, here is the Promised Cat Tarot. The cat lovers sort of snuggling in together underneath the sun, undisturbed. And the Tower in this card is the lightning that's frightening the cats off of their little happy perch. And then the images on the end are from the Roots of Asia deck, the beautiful sort of ethereal lover coming down and to clasp the lover. And then you'll notice the end image of the tarot takes a minute to see it, but there's actually a full figure down the card, and then the tower is nested sort of inside of the body of the figure. So one of the ways that others have played with the tarot, this is a book by Italo Calvino called The Castle of Crossed Destinies. In this particular novel, he used the tarot as a means to tell a story about a number of travelers. They all come together, travel through the woods, and they end up in this castle. And the only way they can talk to each other is through the tarot cards, which is kind of fun. The other layer that's in there, of course, is that Calvino is telling the story and interpreting the cards. So there's that layer of trusting that storyteller. You can interpret the cards in so many ways. So when he says this was a nun in the woods, do we know that it's a nun in the woods? Why couldn't it also just be a young lover? So it's just a really rich way of considering storytelling. So in this particular book, he puts the images of the cards down the side of the page as he's telling the story. And at the end of each chapter, you get an image of the entire story. And they take their turns one by one to tell the story of how they arrived there. Calvino also spent a lot of time thinking about this. So I haven't even quite puzzled all of this out, but it's incredible, right? He took the whole tarot deck and decided that if you go this way, you'll get the story of Hamlet. If you go that way, you get the story of King Lear. If you go another way, you get Macbeth. So I find that as a beautiful challenge to all of us too. Think about what stories across time you would love to see told through a tarot deck. And wouldn't it be fun to put some of Ursula Le Guin's stories and see what you could tell? Could you tell the Handmaid's Tale laying out the tarot cards? Just endless possibilities and ways to play. Probably, maybe some of you came across this in your studies with poetry. T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland. There's a poem where he mentions characters that we have been able to match up with the tarot cards here. So you might want to take a look at that poem. And this was an article by Benebell Wen where she explains the connections between the cards and the poems. But there have been many poets who play with tarot and poetry. So it's just such a fertile starting place. Thinking about you and tarot, I would invite a very simple place to start for you would be to use the aces to start your tarot timeline. And again, you would spend some time thinking about which of the areas you're interested in writing about. The heart and love certainly would lend itself to an exploration of the Ace of Cups, or the Ace of Discs, where you're looking at projects or manifestation or how money has or hasn't been used or created, and the Ace of Wands, where you're looking at decisions around the will or coming into power and creativity. Ace of Swords would be the mind or the element of air. So there's a process that I have found to be very powerful throughout my life with the tarot, using something I call a tarot journaling method, where you don't take into account yet the deck maker's intent, and that lets you have a relationship with the imagery in front of you. There are 3 possible ways to point your gaze at the card when you sit down to write. Do you wish to address the past? Do you want to look at the present? Or are you visioning forward? And for the purposes of a tarot timeline, the invitation is really to think about, I'm going to let this card help me access how I lived or experienced the imagery in front of me in relation to the life that I have already lived. And the invitation in that sense, if you're coming to the tarot without knowing anything at all about it, and you pull out the Ace of Cups and put it in front of you, simple entry might be to list the objects and the colors and describe the emotional texture of the scene and use free writing from there, or allow yourself to connect it across time to your experiences. So again, if we just look at these 3 different versions of the same card, again, you're going to access very different writing depending on the imagery you choose. In that Rider Waite Smith Ace of Cups, we see this lovely hand extending this gift of the cup, this feeling of overwhelming love, and it's being blessed by this dove coming down out of the sky. The Daughters of the Moon Ace of Cups, she's standing in the water, standing in this beautiful, rich environment. The 3rd card on the end is called the Voyager deck, created by James Wanless, and all of his cards are collage imagery. So there you're going to be attracted to the flowers and the butterfly, and it'll take you on a very different voyage. So really the first invitation is to come to the card and engage with what you're seeing there, and then allow it to remind you of other times in your life. So specifically, you might be ruminating about a time when you allowed yourself to feel loved by others, a time when you felt joyfully at peace in solitude, or aware of your intrinsic value as a human being. And then you would think about, where did I find that expression? When have I felt that in my life? And it also might be about the absence of that. That's also equally powerful when we come up against that experience. And another way to channel that understanding is to be looking at self-love and who you learned it from in terms of other people. Who are the people in my family who expressed or embodied that particular state that I'm seeing in the card? And again, conversely, you might be learning from a lack from what you saw in someone who was unable to love and what that taught you about love itself in your own life. And then you can extend that out, of course, to society or popular culture. Once you've done that initial writing, if you've been able to refrain from looking at what the deck maker said, because many of us probably will go right and look at what the deck maker said, then you can go back and look and see, and these are some of the traditional things that are associated with the Ace of Cups: loving and healing and balancing, accepting, grieving, all of this different types of love. And then you might go back into your writing again and see what else you mine now that you know what the deck maker intended. But honestly, the encouragement is really to help you have your own relationship first before you have someone else telling you what you should be thinking or feeling about the imagery, which I think is really beautiful. It puts you in the seat of introspective power, and it gives you a chance to let the cards invite you further into your own story. So this is just for fun. This is an example. Amelia, in her free writing, this particular timeline, this, there's color and colored pencil involved, but you could also just very simply sketch out a line where you make notes after you've done your free writing and let yourself write down the most potent sort of points of interest, where the heat is in your writing, in that free writing. So for her, she's thinking about water just in general. And the very first memory at 3 years old, playing in the kiddie pool in a sprinkler in California. And then she remembers that first crush on the kindergartner, Tommy. And in this particular example, she's put the happy memories above and then sort of the more challenging memories down below, like in the compost or the rich zone down there. They're all rich. They play different roles, right? So 8 years old, she's remembering this really bad rainstorm where she was terrified. 12, there's two different things that happen for her at age 12. Dad starts drinking, mom moves out. Her uncle shows her how to develop photos in his dark room, and she's in love with photography. So again, your own writing is going to dictate what you bring up. And then you can also play with the time span. How long do you want to go? Where is your writing taking you? And that's going to also be tied in with the scope of your own project that you're already working on. So you can direct the arrow of the time frame, the passion. And here it's all very loosely just about water, inspiration, love, also sorrow, right? And both things are there and are true. What I wanted to show you here too, so this is still staying with the cups theme, but now we're looking at a story card, because sometimes the aces, all of the aces just show you that hand coming out of the sky and you're like, I need a story. So you can always go to the other 40 minor arcana cards and look for a story that's talking to you. Here we have two different Two of Cups versions, and I'm sorry about the quality of this photo. This is a goddess deck, and it's a couple holding cups up there, and then she's got there's a veil between them. And the other deck is the Osho Zen deck, and we've got the two trees. But again, these are two depictions of the exact same card. So this particular student looked at these two cards, and then this is an example of what she wrote to the very first writing, or the first card. The moon shines down on a pair of lovers. They hold up a cup to catch the moon's rays. Now the woman holds up the cups. She's the one in control. The man simply rests his hands on hers. In her other hand, she grasps another cup, her grip strong and sure. She is veiled. Why? Is this a marriage? I don't like the veil. I have too many connotations of ownership and being passed from one man to another. It's hard for me to see these two as equals. Behind them, dark pine trees rise out of the forest, and moonlight shines on the calm water veering about. The moon is calm. Now I can see there's a bridge spanning the water. It's barely visible in the distance, but it helps them bridge the gap between them. At first, I avoided this card. This tale of man and woman is not my story, and I've been pitied and told I am blocked when it comes to men. But I like carrying my own burdens, so I am fiercely afraid that people will think I am sad or dissatisfied. Don't pity my solitary state. I am free. So that was her first round of writing. And in there you can see she's, starts with the moon, moves to the lovers. She really starts to look at what's the story between them. And then she connects it to her own life and her experience. And then by the very end, she was surprised when we talked about this writing. Don't pity my solitary state. I'm free. Like she didn't realize how strongly she felt about some of this until she was doing the writing. Then she dove in again using a second deck to look at the exact same experience. And she says, this is more like it. This card I can relate to. Two trees grow intertwined, mingling their red and yellow leaves. They are both independent and yet interdependent, equal and yet supportive. They glow with a softness as if lit from within, lit by the light of their true selves. Leaves have fallen around them, so they're surrounded by a lake of yellow and red. They must be autumn trees like I am in the autumn of my life. I'm at a time in my life where I will begin losing years just as they lose leaves. I feel a sense of urgency. I want to stand true and strong like these trees, taking what support I can to live my full life. When I look at these beautiful, calm beings, it makes me hopeful. I too can take a mantle of friendliness and wrap it around me, mingle my leaves with those who nurture me. It's hard for me to think of only one person because I have so many. That is what comes of not partnering up in life. I have a whole legion to ring around me, not just one. I'm joyous in all their love and support. Like the trees, I lift my arms to the sky. So again, this is just sort of that raw journaling to the imagery. And then later she sifts through this to look for seeds of what she wants to develop, either in prose poetry or an essay looking at love. It just depends on what your particular project is. So I wanted to continue moving through the aces to show you the ace of discs, how different again they are from one another. The discs are again about learning how we manifest things, or also I think of it as the body. And in the Rider Waite Smith, you see that hand being coming out of the sky to give you everything you might possibly need, or a gift of some kind of sustenance. And then in the Daughters of the Moon image, we get a much more sort of a martial arts view, grounding, and the fire is something that comes up out of the earth, but also is inside the body. And in the Voyager deck, we've got the planets as discs, right? So you'll see the deck makers playing even with what they think the suit of pentacles is, or money, or here in this case, worlds. So it's really lovely to see how they play. If you wanted to look at lessons of the mind or the intellect or learning in any way, dreams, visions, the Ace of Swords in that Rider Waite Smith version, again, the first card, you're just being handed that crown of clarity. Maybe it's, always having had a great sense with words, or being a keen editor. When you look at the second card, the Daughters of the Moon, there's a whole story in that card, right? It's the Sibyl, and people are coming to her for the answer. There's a sense of being a channel in some way or providing information. In the Voyager deck, we've got the collage imagery of crystals and how we think about the crystals are formed in the earth itself from pressure and the way that they give and catch light, or potentially focus light in different ways. So these are all just really diverse ways of thinking about the invisible forces that are around us. So if you're writing, that you will be attracted to one particular area or another when you go to pull from the deck and start writing. This Ace of Wands row, I talked a little bit about how the sun takes a seed and helps it blossom. And again, you're just sort of being handed that wand. And for some of you, that may be very inspiring and tell you a whole story. But again, I'm so moved by these other two versions where this woman is just leaping, like, I'm here. I'm going to express all of who I am. Vibrant blue pants coming out of the gorgeous center of the fire to express and dance. In the Voyager deck, we've got the hand itself showing the heat that comes through our hands. And if you look at each of the rays in the card, we've got some sunlight. There's some imagery of cactus from the desert, looking at different ways that heat, there's a story in the heat that fires our imagination or fires the way that we move through our lives. I just wanted to share for fun with you a few other images. The tarot by Richard Cavendish has many images across time from the tarot itself. This is an image of the Queen of Discs. So in this particular image from the 15th century, we have the pomegranate instead of the disc as a depiction for the queen. Also for fun, for the James Bond movies, this 007 deck is an image of the magician card. Mary Greer has a wonderful list of places where the tarot shows up in movies and films that I can share with you. So what I wanted to just emphasize or share with you is that the decks, every tarot deck gives you 78 visual prompts for journaling and writing or creation in some form or another. You are given this sort of built-in structure for exploring the stages of interpersonal growth through the people cards, the stages of our life lessons as we pass through our lives with the 4 elements, the earth, the air, the fire, and the water, and then the stages of soul growth through the major arcana, cards from the Fool all the way to the World card. And what this allows you to establish a conversation with yourself while creating writing that you can use to seed across future projects. I would also say that, anything we do with regularity or habit creates a certain sense of awareness. And so here I'm really inviting you to come to the tarot as a tool, separate from the divination aspects that are traditionally associated with tarot. But I think anytime you start to develop a relationship with something over time, it's going to yield you a deeper layers of seeing.